adventure on the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast, proudly supported by the one and only Minnesota Functional Neurology and Chiropractic, Dr. Jeremy Schmo and team. As well, we have sponsorship proudly from Revive Treatment Centers of America, Dr. Joshua Flowers and his team. Thank you so much for your support, gentlemen.
Thank you guys so much. It really means a lot. And, with the Feed a Brain book coming out here, I'm just so excited. I really think we have the potential to change a lot in the world here, and your support means so much.
Well, and Kevin, you're branching off or expanding from the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast, creating awareness and networking and resources for people. And we're eagerly awaiting the launch of your book titled Feed a Brain. And there's a full title. Tell us the full title, please.
It is How to Feed a Brain, Nutrition for Optimal Brain Function and Repair. Which
you kind of sort of know just a little bit about. And there are many people in the neuro rehab and nutrition world who are saying fabulous things about the work you've done. And I would like to read one if we have just a moment.
Yeah, thank you.
So there's a blurb from Rob Wolf, a long time paleo author and advocate for nutrition, and his comments are, 10 years ago, most health professionals would have scoffed at the notion that what we eat, how we sleep, and how we move could have profound impacts on our health in general and our brain health in particular. Fortunately, this outdated paradigm is shifting, and How to Feed a Brain will be a key piece of this change. Those are some pretty kind words from Mr. Rob Wolf, Kevin.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, Rob's a very good guy, and two-time bestseller, Wall Street Journal and New York Times.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Well, he's so prolific and he's so involved. He's such a great advocate for the paleo movement and healthy eating. I mean, he's had a tremendous impact on many lives over the past couple of decades. So, he doesn't just write these blurbs willy-nilly. He's got some weight behind him.
Yeah, it means so much to have Rob's endorsement. And, right now with the launching of the book, we could really use some support in building the website, in making sure that this launch is super successful, because this is how we're going to change healthcare and change how the brain is treated and improve people's understanding of how to optimize their brain function and live a healthier, more vibrant life.
So, and not just one brain, Kevin, but the mission we have stated to improve 1 billion brains and 1 billion lives. So,
and as we talked about before, if we improve 1 billion brains, those 1 billion brains are going to improve 1 billion more, or 10 billion more. Yeah, so what we're looking for is people, clinics, organizations who really believe in this mission. Companies that provide excellent brain care for brain injury and disease, clinics and companies that provide superb brain-building nutritional supplement or food products, companies that provide therapeutic tools that are very beneficial for the brain, and companies that provide real food gastric feeds also, like food products and gastric feeds. I would really like to talk to you.
Could you imagine what it would be like for patients in the hospital to have real food, nourishing?
Imagine that.
I mean, just the energy. Patients fed by gastric tubes are not necessarily, well, of course, they're not tasting the food, but can you imagine what it would be like to have something made with real food ingredients? I really feel that the body would sense the difference between canned corn syrup product and real
I mean,
food.
you said they're not tasting it, yet the first ingredients include corn syrup, soy protein isolate, corn maltodextrin. I mean, yeah, it's criminal. It's criminal. Seriously.
How do you feel about it?
How do you feel about it? Tell me how you really feel. Yeah. So real food gastric feed companies absolutely would love to speak with you. And let's improve 1 billion brands. Let's improve 1 billion lives, and then let's have those 1 billion lives improve 10 billion.
Let's do it.
All right. In other news, I am also taking consultations for survivors, for loved ones, and also for practitioners. So free 30-minute consults. Go to Feed a Brain or adventuresinbraininjury.com/consult. I think that's it for the housekeeping. You want to jump into this?
I want to jump in. Let's talk with Dr. Kelsey Brenner and brain waves and neurofeedback.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 26th episode of the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast. My name is Kevin Ballister. I'm a severe traumatic brain injury survivor and creator of adventuresinbraininjury.com. I'm also creator of feedabrain.com. With me, as always, is Michelle Malmberg, who I spent all of last week with up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And we went to just gorgeous places and had pretty much one of the most powerful experiences I've had. How about you, Michelle? How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. And I'm just smiling. It sort of sounds like your voice tells me that you've been perhaps traveling on an aircraft all day yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
You sounded a little more conservative than you usually do, which is just fine because, yes, we had a pretty exhausting, rigorous schedule at the Cree Nation Sundance, an amazing ceremony of sacred ceremonies for what? That was 4 days. 4 days of intense ceremony. Oh, incredible.
Yeah, and such amazing people that we met there, including Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Yes.
It was powerful. I'm speechless.
I know. Nobody was expecting the final ceremony of the Sundance, which was the wedding of Bruce and Margaret.
Mm-hmm.
It was really special. Yeah. Very, very touching. So now we get to switch gears and get back into podcast mode, Kevin, because
we're in it.
We have a fabulous guest with us this morning.
Absolutely. Who do we have with us today?
We have Dr. Kelsey Brenner of the South Florida Integrative Health Clinic. So I am going to introduce her, please. We were fortunate enough to have Dr. David Traster, the other partner at South Florida Integrative, speak to us about Lyme disease and brain injuries on podcast adventure number 21. And this week we get to interview Dr. Kelsey Brenner, who just, I can already tell, brings her gentle feminine energy and powerful knowledge base to her patient population as a chiropractor, functional neurologist, a diplomate of the American Chiropractic Neurology Board, and a fellow of the American Board of Brain Injury and Rehabilitation. She's also trained as a health coach through the Duke Integrative Medicine coursework, which offers clinicians a really diverse, holistic approach to patient care. And we like that, don't we, Kevin? She's also explored the role of plant-based health in plant-based nutrition in human health, which is so much aligned with what we do. And I love the joke that you always make, Kevin. I think I consume more vegetables than most vegetarians. So So that's an interesting topic to speak on too. And I just have to say, you and I were both touched by a quote that Kelsey chose to put on her webpage, and I would like to read it. "The root of all health is in the brain. The trunk of it is in emotion. The branches and leaves are the body. And the flower of health blooms when all parts work together." And this is a Kurdish saying. I'm going to read more Kurdish work because this is so beautiful and so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's beautiful and very similar to the brain garden analogy I make as well.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, Kelsey. We are so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to speak with you guys.
Yeah, I thinking about your story back. You grew up as a competitive soccer player. Tell us about that.
I grew up playing, every sport you could think of. I ended up settling on soccer as my main one for a really long time. I played since I was 6, and I went all the way through college, played D1 in New York, and I loved it. But
so you're a New Yorker?
I am a New Jersey, New Yorker combo, so it's pretty lethal.
You guys are dangerous. No, East Coast squared.
Only a turnpike in the way.
Yes. My twin sister has cerebral palsy, and she's absolutely brilliant. She's finishing her 3rd master's degree. Physically, she's very limited. She's in a power wheelchair, so that's how she gets around. But obviously from a young age, I was exposed to how a brain injury can impact somebody, and going with her to different physical therapy, different doctor's appointments. And so from a young age, I'd go with her to different physical therapy appointments, different doctor's appointments, and I was exposed to other children as well who had different varying degrees of brain injuries or spinal cord injuries. And so I was exposed to it and very fascinated with the brain from the very beginning. And then I experienced my own impact with brain injuries through concussions. I played soccer my whole life, and my first one, I believe I was around 14, and I recovered pretty quickly. I was okay. But over the next years, I kind of got little ones here or there, and then ultimately I was playing soccer in college, D1. It was great. I loved it. And I got my 5th concussion. And I remember it like it was yesterday. My feet were taken out from under me as I was going up for a header, and I slammed my head on the ground. It was like early spring. The ground was pretty much frozen still. So it was like hitting cement. And I remember feeling my brain just shake in my head. And I was just like, this is not good. Oh, and no. I got up, I kept playing, but I knew something was wrong. And then we were on the bus ride home, and I was sitting there, and I just started crying. I was just like this, I felt horrible. I was sick. My vision was kind of going in and out. It was not good. And I think part of it too was just knowing, okay, this was number 5, at least recorded. There was probably more than that. And I knew I was probably going to be told that I couldn't play again. And so it was just kind of this accumulation of all these things, of the brain injury obviously affecting my emotions, what was happening, what was going to happen, what was the doctor going to say. And I remember going to the neurologist, and sat there for hours, in this fluorescent light bulb room, which didn't help anything.
Oh, it doesn't help at all.
No. And we go in, and my trainer came with me, and we sat down, and within 5 seconds, the neurologist was like, "You can never play again," and then just pretty much just walked out the room.
Oh,
I was just like, okay. Yeah, and it's not, obviously people go through much more severe brain injuries and life-altering experiences, but at the time I knew it was coming, but to hear it was a different story. And so that was a little hard. And at that time, concussions were kind of starting to be spoken about, but nobody did anything. It was go in a dark room, rest, that's it. Like there was no rehab. There was nothing. Nobody advised me not to. I was in college. Nobody said, don't go to the party and drink, like
Right.
that probably would have been a good advice, but it was just, it was, nobody knew then. And
at the same time, you're a dual major, doing mathematics and pre-medicine.
Yep, I was a dual major, and I was doing it in 3 years. So I had started with some credit already, and so I was kind of compacting that into 3 years instead of 4. So it was pretty demanding. And I remember after that I don't remember after that fifth concussion. I think I was in Calc 3 at that point, and I don't remember the entire semester. I mean, I passed somehow, but I remember going into the next semester and being like, I don't remember anything I learned. Like, I don't even remember being in the classes.
Dr. Brenner.
Yeah, that was scary. And then the other, there was 2 other components of it was facial or name recognition. My best friends could be walking towards me on campus, and I could not, for the life of me, like, get their name. I couldn't think of it, and it was embarrassing. I would kind of like avoid people if I would see them coming, because I was like, I cannot think of this person's name, and this is going to be embarrassing. And so, like, that was another sign. And then the last real big sign that was kind of the major problem was just this emotional roller coaster. I had no control over any of my emotions. I felt like I was like a 12-year-old girl, like going through puberty again, like it was just like, I was like crazy. And it didn't help that after I was told I couldn't play anymore, they were like, well, why don't you just like kind of be like an assistant? You can help with the team and be with us on the sidelines. And I, as well-meaning as my coach was with that suggestion, I think it was just not the right place. I mean, I was sitting there watching these games, and all I wanted to do was be playing, and I had this emotional dysregulation combining with it, and it didn't help at all. And obviously, what I know now, everything I know about the brain, I look back and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And just like, I want to like hug my brain. I want to tell myself all the things I can do. I want to tell myself what's happening. Like, why are you feeling this way? And it motivates me now, but it was definitely a tough time then.
Well, and one of the things that Calvin and I, one of the most touching points about the practitioners whom we interview is the fact that so many of them have walked the journey. And so when you sit in clinic with a patient and they just drop their entire guard and a bucket of tears, you can cradle them in so many ways beyond what a textbook doctor can do, because you've actually had the experience and the heartbreak of loss and grief of this journey yourself. And I think it's so important that I've sat in the same room as doctors who have absolutely no clue how much I'm grieving over the years I've lost being a mother because I've had a brain injury, or the family events that I've had to forego because I've had a brain injury. They just do not understand, but you do.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely helped me clinically, and these patients walk in, and it's also helped too, and I'm sure you guys experienced it. Sometimes explaining a symptom you're having with a brain injury can be really difficult. Yes. And people come up with the best ways to explain it. They'll be like, there are fuzzy bees in my head, mm-hmm. Or like it feels like there is this film over my eyeballs, and and it's just like, I get it. I know, because you can give me the weirdest ways and I will get it, like, and I love it. I'm like, oh, that's a good one. Like, that's a good one.
Yeah, write it down. Actually, somebody said to me at one point, and I experience dysarthria, or difficulty in pronouncing very well, slurred speech, right? Mm-hmm. So I was talking to another survivor. He said, it's like every word is a tongue twister. And I was like, that's exactly it. Every
Yeah.
word is a tongue twister.
There we
Right.
go.
And it's a good feeling when somebody identifies with you with that.
It's so true, to be understood. And I think so many brain injury patients, I mean, we're people, and we just need to be heard. We need to be understood. We were driving, I took Kevin up to see Lake Louise.
Man, that was gorgeous.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous. I want to go up there so bad.
Kelsey, no idle offers. There's an open door.
Wonderful.
So I took him up. We had a wonderful conversation, some homemade coffee in the home of Dr. Bonnie Kaplan here in Calgary before we headed out. And so it was just a wonderful day of inspiration. And then you talk about just, you know, the descriptions of what is happening to me. And so Kevin and I had 2 hours from Calgary to the mountains, and you start getting into some pretty deep discussion. And I mean, I was still, it's been 3 years since my last brain injury, and so number 2, and I'm still dealing with the fallout and the consequences and the daily challenges. And there I was, the one day that I decide I'm going to wear makeup because I know Cameron and his camera is going to be clicking pictures all over the place. And my mascara is just hanging beneath my eyeballs because I'm still losing it. It's still affecting me. And those when somebody just says, so it's this, isn't it? And just nails it on the head. The relief that comes with being heard is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible.
And, it is. And I think also from a family side of it, I mean, with my sister, I grew up with that. I saw everything she went through. I saw everything that my parents would go through, insurance companies, this, that, the whole spectrum that comes with an injury. And so I can identify with the patient, but then I can also identify with the parents and the families when they come in. And it's almost, I was young with my sister. Well, obviously we were the same age the whole time. We're twins. Right. But I mean, I was, when I was starting to get older and comprehend what was happening, I can only do so much to help. Yes. And so now having that ability and understanding the brain and having these parents come in who have been to all these different people, and not even one person has even explained what's going on with their child's brain. Like even just said, like, they just give them a label or this or that. And they there's nothing against any of those doctors. They are usually time limited, or there's so much going on, but nobody's just sat down and like drawn it out or said, okay, this is what a cerebellum is, or this is where the brain injury was, and this is why they're having this symptom and that symptom. Like, it's all coming from over here, because it can just seem as like, especially with the emotional parts of a lot of brain injuries, like it can just seem that they're acting out or this or that, when half the time it's all coming from the brain. Everything we perceive, everything we say, how we feel, it's all how our brain's interpreting it. And so if you have an injury, it's all impacted.
I've said this before, and I just have to say it again. My moment of revelation, I had a small epiphany when I cracked open the book titled "Why Isn't My Brain Working?" by Dr. David Traster. And chapter one goes through the major characteristics of each lobe of the brain, what they're responsible for, and some of the common symptoms of injury to that lobe. Well, I had my pencil, I whipped out a pencil, and I'm just check. Yep. Whoa! And finally, the picture started coming together for me, just like you are explaining. When people sit down and tell parents, a practitioner tells the parent, well, this is the brain, this is the area affected, and these are the symptoms you are witnessing, and this is why. I mean, that book is written for the layperson as well as the practitioner, and it is so concise. I had light bulbs. I had fireworks going on. I was just so happy to have some explanation. You're so right. People need to understand what's going on. It's not just some willy-nilly screaming fit.
Well, I want
Right.
to chime in here because when seeing functional neurologists really helped me to understand what was going on. And the word doctor comes from the Latin word doctor, which means to teach. And that's what I see so much with functional neurologists who really are teaching the patient what they need to know in order to understand their symptoms and where those symptoms are coming from and how they can rehabilitate those. So speaking of functional neurology, what got you into chiropractic care and functional neurology? And I just want to say this before we go into it. Functional neurologists, they're all chiropractors, but all chiropractors are not functional neurologists. So, yeah, tell me about what got you into chiropractic care and then what brought you into the functional neurology aspect of that.
Yeah, sure. It's so, again, like looking back of how I ended up here is just so incredible. But I was in college. I was pre-med and math major, and I was gonna go to medical school. It's kind of what was always in my plan ever since I was younger. And then I just kind of realized that I don't at that moment, like I didn't even enjoy taking Advil. I didn't like the idea of covering up symptoms, and not that all medicine is doing that, but I was just really getting more interested in more holistic care and looking at the entire patient. And so I started exploring different areas, and my sister had received craniosacral work, and the doctor who had owned that clinic was a chiropractor, and so I was exposed to that from a younger age. I was also exposed to chiropractic work for sports injuries at school and things like that. And so I started investigating a little bit more, and I realized, you know what, this seems like the best route for me to be able to eventually one day have my own clinic, really work with patients and kind of go about this holistically. And so I went to school, and honestly, when I first started, I was a little unsure about it. It wasn't exactly what I had pictured. I was looking for more information on. I wanted to learn more nutrition. I wanted to learn more different rehabilitation styles, and I was trying to find all these different things. And one day, someone was like, "I really think you need to go to a functional neurology club." And I was like, "Well, I like the name," and so I showed up, and I was just like, oh my gosh, where has this been my whole life? You know, like I couldn't believe that this existed. And it was what was always in the back of my head, what I'd always been thinking about and trying to understand with the brain. And especially looking at my sister, I would be like, I feel like we're going about this a different way. Why are we trying to make her muscle move back and forth when it's her brain who controls her muscle? You know, like even from a young age, I just kept thinking that. And I was like, I just don't understand. Like it feels like we're going backwards. And I was like, I feel like we need to focus on the brain. And I go to a functionality club, and it's right there. That's all they're talking about. And it was amazing. And the timing of it was that the next quarter, Dr. Carrick shows up on campus, and I jumped right in. I got to learn under him from the very beginning of being in school. I ended up taking over the club. I became president of the club. I got to intern under Dr. Carrick the whole time. All of his grand rounds, I got to be there. I mean, I'm so grateful for the experience I had through that. I mean, it was life-altering. That's why I'm here. And the patients I was exposed to, and the stories, and the different treatment options and just seeing it unfold was what created who I am now. And so that is how I am here.
That is wow. I mean, in the arts world, to learn from the master is such an honor. And for you to be attending all those grand rounds with Dr. Carrick, I mean, I'm quite proud of Dr. Carrick because he is Canadian, you know.
He is. He'll let you know it too.
Oh, that's very funny. When I meet him,
so will Michelle.
Yeah. Oh, as if we didn't meet proud Americans on the hiking trail, Kevin.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
We were hiking
Welcome to Canada. Welcome to Canada. Hello. Welcome to Canada.
and of course
I'm Canadian. Well, you're still welcome.
Oh my gosh, it was a good time. And our brains were working well because we could banter.
Yes.
So you were
We're talking about Dr. Carrot.
I know, we're going back to, yes, what I wanted to do. So having this influence is just incredibly powerful, I think, having it come from the father of functional neurology. And then how did you come into studying neurofeedback and brainwaves? I really want to know more about this.
Yeah. So, honestly, I was like, they're probably going to ask me that. And I was like, I cannot remember a specific moment where I was like, hey, I want to study brainwaves. I was talking to Dave about it too. I was like, was there a moment where I just started talking about it? Like, I can't remember. But I mean, I think what was happening over this time as I was learning and I was teaching and all this stuff, it all comes down to the neuron. And so it's like the health of the neuron. And so I was trying to understand all the aspects of a neuron. What makes it healthy?
Yes.
What does it need? Oxygen, glucose, stimulation. And so I started looking into the stimulation because that's our playground, that's what we're doing. And then I think I just started reading more research into different like neuronal oscillations and firing patterns. And I got kind of interested in that. And then
Can I stop you right there? So when we're talking about brainwaves, that's talking about firing patterns within the networks of neurons?
Yes. So a neuron has its own little firing. It has its own little action potential. Then you start bringing groups of neurons together, either around each other or they make pathways, things like that. They tend to start firing in synchrony. And when you get enough firing together, you create kind of this field that can be sensed by an electrode, and that's where you can see the actual brainwave. And so there's different types of brainwaves. So there's slower brainwaves, faster brainwaves, and they all range through these different frequencies, which is cycles per second of how they're firing. And they all have a little different role in the state of our brain and our mind and how we're kind of taking in our world. And so I started studying that, and eventually I ended up reading a book called Symphony in the Brain. And it was a great introductory book. It's anybody can read it. It's really interesting. It goes into the history of neurofeedback, how it started, how it was discovered. And
did you say Symphony of the Brain?
Symphony in the Brain.
In the Brain. That's going on my reading list.
Yeah, it's a really great introduction to it.
And that would likely have been many years ago when you found that book.
Yeah, and it was kind of like when I was ending my schooling and I was really getting into it, and so I read that and I was like, okay, this is very interesting. So then I started just gobbling up as much information as I could, and it was funny, like those kind of moments where you say you just learned something or you're focusing on something and all of a sudden it's all around you. It probably was always there, but it's just all of a sudden I just saw neurofeedback everywhere, and I would be at a seminar and somebody was there speaking on it, or I'd be looking through articles and some NFL player was talking about it, and it ended up being everywhere in front of me. And I was learning about it and I was like, I feel like this is one of the missing pieces in my therapy toolkit. My training is in the brain and understanding the neuron, and I understand this whole top-down, bottom-up processing. This is what I'm focusing on. But this aspect, these oscillations of these neurons, these brain waves, like this seems to be like something I need to address with my patients. And so I started studying it, and the more I read about it, I was like, this, especially the types of patients we saw, I was like, I feel like they're getting, due to injuries or toxicity or something that happened, whatever caused their injury, their brainwave patterns are getting out of whack for for a simplified term.
Sure.
And once you have an injury, it's what's really happening, especially with traumatic brain injuries. You're getting axonal injury, you're getting dendritic injuries, and so these areas that were once firing together kind of either tend to go towards the slow end, especially with brain injuries. They tend to revert to the slower brain waves. Or if those areas are no longer getting those inhibitory inputs, they kind of can speed up really quickly. Whatever it is, they're not doing what they should be doing, especially at that time for that patient. And the more they do that, the more they kind of get stuck in that pattern. And so in order to break that, neurofeedback seems to be one of the best ways to really focus on that and break that down.
So break down what is neurofeedback.
Yes. So neurofeedback, the whole process begins with a brain map. And so in our clinic, we do QEEG brain maps. So what is that? It's quantitative electroencephalograph. And
then what's a brain map?
Yes. So we take a EEG. We take in your brain waves, and then we take that information and we compare it to a normative database. This database has thousands of patients in it who were put through different testing or considered normal brains. They didn't have any pathologies or any symptoms, etc. Then what that does is comparing the patient's brainwaves to that normative database, we get a sense of which areas do they have too many brainwaves of this pattern, where do they have too little, and you get something that's called a Z-score. And what that is just a standard deviation from the norm. So do they have +4 of beta on the right or in this area of the brain? Do they have too little delta, things like that. And so that gives us this picture, and literally a map. It's a picture of the brain with all the different areas that we had the electrodes, and it tells us which areas are okay, they're pretty normal, and which areas need a little work. And it also tells us probably what types of symptoms they're having. So you can look at a brain map before even speaking to the patient and be like, they may have these symptoms, with a grain of salt. But it just kind of gives you an idea of, hey, they maybe have had a brain injury, or maybe they're having difficulty concentrating, or maybe this person has anxiety, and you can see it right there, and then you go talk to them, and it's exactly what they're experiencing.
Isn't that rewarding? Wow. So when we focus on brainwaves specifically, we are all right now in a beta stage. We're in a beta brainwave stage. So could we take some time and just go through beta, alpha, theta, delta, and then, when we really want to buzz ourselves, gamma?
Sure.
Today, right now, beta.
Yeah. So right now we're engaged. So we're in beta, but I'll start from the slowest end. So delta is our slowest wavelength. It's mostly, it should be present when we're in deep sleep and not dreaming. So it's really slow restorative sleep. If there's a lot of delta when we're pretty conscious and going about our day, then something's not right.
Okay.
We're operating in these slow waves that really shouldn't be present when we're conscious and engaged with our environment.
Okay.
And then when we move up a little bit, we have theta, which is kind of like this when you're kind of dozing off, a little sleepy, not really paying attention. And when you see a little too much theta, that's when you get kind of these ADD type symptoms. Just kind of can't really pay attention, difficulty focusing. There's too much theta, especially if it's in the frontal lobe area. They can't engage.
That would be for a child or adult, this ADD, ADHD.
Exactly.
Okay, go on.
Yeah. And then alpha, so that's kind of this middle ground, that's like our idling brainwave. And so we're kind of always kind of in it. It's not really, it's more internally focused. You're paying attention to things coming in, but not super engaged. It's kind of somewhere where we can shift either down or we can shift up to engage. And so it's this idling phase, but if you have a little bit too much of that. So
like when we're watching TV, that's what we're in.
Probably going back and forth, because I mean, when you're watching TV, you're paying attention to what they're saying, things like that. So you're probably a little bit between alpha, between beta, kind of going back and forth.
Okay.
And all of these waves are always present. They're always going it's an ebb and flow. It's always going back and forth. It's just during different states of mind have more than the other.
So it's about dominance, which is kind of dominating.
Yeah, which is kind of dominating, and where. So where in the brain is it also dominating?
Right. Okay. Okay. So
then,
these are oscillations in the brain waves, meaning groupings of neurons and their firing patterns
yes.
going in a certain pattern in different areas of the brain. So
Yes.
when we see delta for deep sleep without dreaming, we're talking about almost all of the brain in this delta state. Is that right?
Delta, when you're sleeping, yeah, it's pretty. It could be pretty like throughout the brain. Again, you're always seeing little ebbs and flows, and with our sleep cycles, it changes as well. So you kind of drop into delta, drop out of delta, drop into delta, drop out of delta, and so you have an ebb and flow of that as well. So they're all always a little bit everywhere, but it just depends on which different state you're in.
Gotcha. Okay. But we'll see with like alpha and beta and other brain waves and probably delta as well, that different brainwave patterns or different brain waves are dominant in different areas of the brain at the same time. And so how are these brain waves measured?
So they're measured so through the EEG, and so when all these neurons come together and they fire to make these oscillations, these brain waves, the EEG picks up on that. And so the test is usually we do about 3 minutes eyes closed, 3 minutes eyes opened, and we look and see and make sure we're getting clear reading. And then that gives us, if you ever watch some of those movies, people are looking at the brains and you see all these waves going across the screen. That's what I get to look at all day. And
Nice.
I get super nerdy when I'm like, oh, that's a beautiful reading. I had an intern the other day and I was like, come look at this. It's a great recording. And they're like, oh, you're such a nerd.
All right. I feel like I interrupted the flow of things. We're at alpha.
Yeah. So alpha, like I was saying, is kind of this idling. We're not super paying attention, but we're there and we're able to engage in beta when we need to. Beta is like Michelle was saying, we're engaged. We're focused. We're computing things. We're thinking about things. That's our beta. This can get a little out of control when you think of like anxieties or OCDs. These are our higher brain waves, and so you tend to see this a lot. I feel like I see this in half the patients who come in. I mean, anxiety is a big problem with brain injuries and just in the society in general. It's just this hypervigilance, always aware, kind of over arousal, and so we do see that a lot, and that definitely correlates with the higher waves like beta.
I just got back from Pittsburgh, where I was having my brain scanned with high definition fiber tracking, and I had the opportunity. It's cool stuff. I'll send you my brain at some point. You can check it out. That sounds great. I'll send you my brain. Don't worry about it. It might be a little messy, but it'll get there. So yeah, and actually I got to hang out with William Bird, who's the lead tractographer over there. We actually did a video together, and I wrote an article about high definition fiber tracking when I was there 6 months ago. And we recorded another one, but he couldn't allow me to record the controls of the brain, but it's kind of like what you're talking about. We're taking normative data, so data of control subjects, and then compiling it, getting a bunch of that and creating kind of like, this is what a normal brain should look like. And this is what your brain looks like, and this is how it's different, right? But
Right.
while we were looking at that, we saw so much, what's the word I'm going for? Diversity. We
Right.
saw so much diversity in the brains that we were seeing in the control subjects, which was pretty interesting to me. And the controls were, they reported that they never had a brain injury, and I was like, I don't know about that. I bet you a lot of people have had brain injuries that they're not aware of, you know?
Exactly. Yes.
Right. And I mean, that's with everything, with lab testing, all of that. It's like, okay, so what's normal? Especially in this country, it's like people are exposed to toxins and injuries, and everybody's on medications, and, like, what is considered normal? And so, like, everything, even blood work, I mean, you have to take everything with a grain of salt and be like, okay, and always look at a person as a unique person. Like, I could take a brain map and be like, you have all these things going on, and you are this or this, you must be experiencing all these things. And they're like, actually, I'm pretty good. Like, you have to, like, the brain adapts, and I mean, maybe if they were given a big stressor, something would come out, and they would be kind of showing some of those signs. But every patient, you can only take testing and labs, and it's not the person in front of you. It's just a tiny piece of data that may help you.
That's beautiful. And that's an aspect of medicine that I actually was thinking about that a lot this weekend, while we were at the Sundance, is that medicine, I would love to see medicine sort of shift from this place of arrogance and know-it-all to this place where there is confidence, but confidence in curiosity. So confidence in the fact that every patient is different, and rather than being arrogant that you know it all, being more curious about this particular case. So the interesting, what I was going to talk with you about is you were talking about the beta, the engaged and focused, and OCD possibly, and possibly some anxiety,
If it's a little out of control, maybe, yes.
Right. Well, they did a magnetoencephalography on my brain as well. And they 6 months ago, they told me that I was hyper vigilant, which I would does that have something to do with the beta waves, perhaps?
Perhaps. I mean, what we do see that, but there's also a tendency for, if there's dominant slow waves, so especially after a brain injury, those fast waves could also increase, almost kind of counterbalancing. So, and it's, again, you have to take in the person's injury and their history and what their personality is right now. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe you do. How many times do you lock your door? So you may, or it could be compensation, and that's why I'm also very thankful for my background in functional neurology, because I'm always looking at the other areas that could be contributing it. It's like, okay, the level of the lesion, like, okay, is this really just a symptom of another area of the brain impacting it, or is it this actual problem? And so that's why I really love the combination of neurofeedback with functional neurology, because every patient who comes to me, like, yes, I see their brain map, but I'm also giving them a full neurological exam. I'm looking at their balance. I'm looking at their VNG, their eye movements. I'm looking at everything, because those bottom areas of the brain are what's firing up into that thalamus, what's firing up into that cortex. And so we have to kind of take it all as a big picture. And so I never just treat a brain map.
Yes, and that's what I absolutely love about functional neurology, is that it's taking in these tools and modalities that can be useful and applying them to what we know about the brain and how we can help to rehabilitate it. You know, the South Florida Integrative Health, that's what you're doing, is integrating many aspects of health and many modalities for healing and rehabilitation, and you're bringing them together in a really great plan that's individualized for the patient.
Yeah, I talk to people about it, and I think it's like the hidden math major in me. It's like a puzzle. It's like a problem, and we have all these pieces, and I look at somebody, I'm like, okay, like what's firing into your system? What are you intaking? How are you processing it, and what are you putting out? You know, like and it comes down to nutrition and brain waves and coordination and thinking and emotions. You know, it all comes together, but it is a integrative puzzle, and so the treatment needs to be the same as well.
You're awesome.
So I'm going to get a little piece of this integrative puzzle with a question, please, for Dr. Brenner. When a brain is overwhelmed, and just, I will give you my daily life for an example. Up, child to school, house to take care of, computer work to do, and all of these are stressors on my injured brain. So there's emotion when there's lack of cooperation in the morning. There's movement if I'm riding a bike or driving my child to school, and there's lots of passing.
Or skateboarding like you were yesterday.
That's pretty darn good. I'm glad you got that in video. I'm going to practice. I mean, moving objects around me. It used to be very difficult to drive because just the dotted lines, the dashed lines passing by my eyes in my peripheral vision, or other vehicles either going the same direction or opposite direction. It was overwhelming for this little brain. And and then the noise in the schoolyard and people moving past me, in the school, and then heading home, and then going to the computer. Super stimulating, these LED screens, and oftentimes, even though I have the FLux on my screen, I still would often wear amber glasses to reduce the input of the blue light, even in daytime. And so I go through my day, and I'm getting to the afternoon, and I haven't had enough time to rest in a dark, quiet place and go into a meditative state. And then I'm back at school picking up, and then we're on to activities. And I have found great relief in having a binaural beat soundtrack on an iPod. Isn't that amazing? I've moved into the 21st century.
You have an iPod.
I borrowed one from my child.
Nice.
And I will just plug in those earbuds and listen, even for 15 minutes. 45 is a dream. An hour is phenomenal. And my brain will just very gently calm down, and I can feel the physiological effects of this calmness. I mean, why does a brainwave soundtrack, a binaural beat soundtrack in the alpha, do that to my brain? How does it do that to my brain?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not necessarily pure neurofeedback, but what is happening, I mean, alpha is going towards the slower waves, and so what you're describing with the rest of your day is just super like high beta. I mean, you are engaged, it's ramping up. We kind of call it like wind up. It just kind of keeps going, and it kind of almost eventually keeps winding itself. And by listening to that, it's almost like a meditative type thing. It's you're pulling down those high beta and kind of reintroducing that alpha and that idling, calm but present state. Okay. And so that's pretty much what you're doing, is you're pulling that down so that you're not reinforcing that beta.
Okay.
So those sounds, binaural beats, and also I've heard of isochronic tones, which I guess are the mono version, basically.
Hmm.
And they both kind of pull your brain waves into a different state. How does that work? Or do we know?
Well, honestly, I don't use those very much with my patients. I use our regular neurofeedback. So I can explain a little bit more about that. Um,
Yeah. Tell me about neurofeedback. How does
yeah.
that work?
So with our patients with the neurofeedback, what's happening is we use that same database. So we do Z-score neurofeedback in our clinic. And so the patient's hooked up again. We do 19 channels. So we do the whole head when we work with patients. And what's happening is they could be either listening to different tones, or a lot of times we just pop up on Netflix and they could watch a show. And what's in front of that is a dimmer screen. And so what's happening is their brain waves are constantly being compared to that database the whole time that they're training. And there's different parameters for, say, they need to be within a 2.5 to negative 2.5 window within the z-scores. Say that because maybe they're starting out in the fives or something, and so you want to slowly bring them down towards normal. If they're within that normative range that you set, then the movie or whatever they're watching will be clear. If they go outside of that, then the movie will start to darken and it'll go dark. And so what's happening is that their brain is getting the feedback that, hey, like I want to watch this movie. And so in order to do that, I'm realizing that if when I'm in these brainwave patterns, that's when the movie plays clear. I should be in those brainwave patterns more often.
Oh,
So it's almost like Pavlov's dogs. They
Kind of.
give
It's
you
more.
reward for having your brain in a certain state.
It's
And
more.
so
Yeah. It's like
go ahead.
Skinner's pigeons.
I don't know about the pigeons. Skinner's pigeons.
Well,
Can you
yeah.
tell us what that is?
Well, it's so that's operant. So the pigeons is operant conditioning. And so what that's what neurofeedback is based off of, is that there's some type of reward. And so you're realizing that if I associate these things, then I will get a reward. And so there's an action with it. And
Right.
and so that's what it is. But it's the thing is it's all non-volitional. It's all the brain doing the work. And so you can even have a child reading a book and there's beeps going on in the background and they might not even really be paying attention to those beeps, but the brain knows what it needs to be doing. It's a hard concept for a lot of people to grasp, especially a patient. All patients who sit
What do you
there
mean
and
by
they
the beeps?
so there's different types of feedback. So people can either have like an auditory feedback where it'll play a certain tone if they're in the correct brainwave pattern, or they could be watching something, like I said, where it'll play clearer if they're in the correct brainwave pattern. So the brain needs some type of feedback to know when it's in the correct brainwaves, because that's its reward. And so it's all passive though. You know, I have patients who sit there and like their first session, I explain this. I say, you cannot volitionally with your mind and your eyeballs make this clear.
oh,
You know,
wow.
like and it's hard to grasp, and they'll finish the session and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I was trying so hard. I was like holding my breath. I was staring at the TV, and I was like, you know, like it's hard for them to grasp, but then slowly they kind of realize like this is like my brain, you know, and it's kind of powerful. It's like, wow, like my brain does this all day long. You know, it's always taking information, subconscious information, and learning from it. And that's what's happening with neurofeedback. It's subconscious learning, and it's giving you the resources so that when you go out in your life, you will default into the correct brainwave patterns no matter what situation you're getting into.
Wow. Isn't that something? I had a flash thinking, well, maybe it's like heart math for the brain, but
yeah, similar.
It's similar, except that, I mean, with heart math, one can control or,
Right.
can change the picture in the mind and affect the emotions, which affects the heart math reading. But you're saying that you can't, like the brain trains itself.
Right.
Well, hold on. I'm gonna. So heart math is basically looking at the beats of the heart. I think if we bring it up, I gotta explain a little bit. So we're looking at the heartbeat, the rate, and also the heart rate variability, which is the little changes in timing between the beats. And that might be a whole another episode that we'll talk about.
Of course it is. I'm
Yeah,
just trying to
that's
be
a great
clear.
tool. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sorry about that. Go on.
No. Yeah. So I mean, it's a hard concept for people to grasp, but yeah, that it's the brain learning for itself, and your brain does this all day long. I mean, if I go pick up a cup, my brain is calculating if I did that correctly or not. Like, and it'll learn from itself and be like, oh, the next time I go pick up that cup, I'm going to make it a little bit better. Like it's all subconscious. It's always learning. It's always adapting, and so that's what neurofeedback is. It's just we're guiding it in a certain way.
That's really quite phenomenal. Well, and it's learning. It's all about learning and training, right? And sometimes I get frustrated, Dr. Brenner, because I think, well, why can't I do that on my own? Why do I need an intervention? Why do I need to pursue help to get me into a place where my brain can learn? I mean, what would you say to me if I sit in your clinic with a frumpy look on my face saying, why can't I do this for myself?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's pretty common. It is a frustrating thing. And it's almost kind of the underlying question of any medical intervention is like, the body's pretty smart. The brain is pretty smart. Like, why wouldn't it figure it out itself, And the thing is, though, that with injuries or stressors or impact of our life, like things can get a little out of control, and our bodies and our brains tend to just try and compensate. And so we need some type of little intervention, even if it's just slight, to just kind of push it along the right track and help it get back to where it needs to be in a healthy way. Because sometimes it's just trying to hold on, like this is the pattern it's in. This is how it knows that it can survive. It's a survival mechanism. I mean, that's what the brain and body will always do. It'll just try and keep you surviving. You may be uncomfortable, but you're alive. And that's what that's what happens. That's what we see with these brain injuries, especially when we're looking at eye movements and balance and things like that. They may have had all these things happen and they were compensating for so long, and then they got sick or one little thing happened and the body was just, I can't handle it anymore. I'm going to take it down a notch, and I'm going to try my hardest. You're going to be uncomfortable, but you're alive, and that's what I think that's what we're seeing with a lot of these brain apps when people come in. Is like there's something to be said also specifically with brain waves is that neurons that fire together wire together, and we get in these patterns. And so once that something starts to go into that pattern, sometimes it can be hard to break, especially with firing rates like that. And so there needs to be some type of little intervention that kind of breaks that and helps guide it back to where it needs to be. And that's okay. It gets frustrating, but we do have these modalities and treatments there for a reason, and it helps people helps their bodies and their brains kind of work towards healing themselves a little bit as much as possible.
Yeah, I love how the brain it's utilizing the nature of the brain as a learning machine, and it's just always learning, and we are always wiring together and firing together. What's firing is wiring. And so on. Our brain is a learning machine. It's utilizing the tools of the nature of that, and using tools to really help guide it, is what it sounds like. It's guiding it towards a direction that is a healthier way of being. Dr. Brenner, I love everything we're talking about, and we could just go on and on and on and on and on. And I'm looking at the time, and I'm like, oh, we better wrap it up here. So let me ask you, where can people find you? I guess same place that we found we can find Dr. Traster.
Yeah, we tend to be in the same location all the time. So yeah, I'm South Florida Integrative.com. That's our clinic website, and we also have our Instagram page. And then I have my own Instagram page at dr.KelseyBrenner. And I've been kind of slacking on that lately, but I tend to try and post some interesting brain facts and things like that. So that's where you can find me.
Well, I'm going to follow you for sure.
Great.
In a good way. The man does get around North America, so it wouldn't surprise me if there was a knock on your door one day.
Always welcome. Always welcome. You might want to come when it's not as hot, but you're always welcome.
I'm very excited to see your guys' clinic at some point soon. And yeah, probably when it's cooler.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the insight into the neurofeedback. I'm going to revisit my QEEG with this knowledge now and take a good look at those maps. And it's always, as we talked about in the very beginning, it's always great to have the information to understand the testing that was done and the results that have been generated. So thank you for the insight.
Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful talking to you guys.
Perfect. We'll do it again.
Yes, we will. Thank you so much, Kelsey.
Have a great day.
You too.
Right. Bye-bye. All right, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on this adventure in brain injury. We are currently looking for sponsors, post-roll and pre-roll, but post-roll right here, right where I'm talking right now.
Your name here. Your
name here. So you can go to feedabrain.com/sponsor. And you can support us in our mission to change healthcare and to improve 1 billion brains and 1 billion lives and to up the understanding of neurorehabilitation and brain optimization. I'm so excited about this book that's coming out. The emails I get that are just really looking forward to this.
Yes.
It's pretty.
And so lots of traffic on social media too. I keep getting alerts. People liking and commenting on Feedabrain, and really we've just started speaking about it. So I'm really pleased. There hasn't even been a push to let people know, and people are finding it, which is really great news. So good work, Kevin.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. All right, well, if you'd like to hear this episode or other episodes like it, you can go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere where podcasts are found. And if you enjoy this and want to support us for each podcast, you can go to patreon.com/AIBI.
All right, let's roll.
All right.
Out
Thanks so much. Let's get out of here.
Bye for now.
Take care. Bye.
Someone take me to a doctor. Yeah, take me to a nurse. Someone take me to a doctor. Yeah, take me to a church. Someone take me to a doctor. Just take away this curse. Someone take me to a doctor.